What's happening? Thanks for joining me on this Friday. It is very much appreciated. Let's start with this. Before we get into the actual content, we have hit 5,500 subscribers. That was our goal, right? To hit 5,500, we are there. I was hoping New Year's Day. We're on January 17th, so a couple of weeks later than I had hoped, but we are here, and all that matters is that we are here. 5,500 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you and your support. Thank you. And now we move on to the next goal, 6,000 subscribers. 6,000 subscribers before we get to free agency. It's about the middle of March. But thanks to every single one of you for supporting this program. Let's start off with some news today. Mike Reese reports that Joe Kim, the director of skill development, working with pass rushers, working with young coaches, Joe Kim is leaving the Patriots organization. Now, of course, every time we see somebody that's going to leave this organization that worked with Bill Belichick, we do have to wonder if that person is headed to North Carolina. Joe Kim could be headed to UNC. We don't know. We do know he's moving on from the Patriots. Many people will tell you that know Joe Kim, know of Joe Kim, that he has helped the defensive line. He has helped some of the young guys on that defensive line improve their technique. He is moving on. So Joe Kim is leaving the organization. We'll see if he heads to North Carolina. Let's talk about the offensive coordinator search. On Tuesday, Mike Vrabel sat down with the Greg Hill Show, WEEI, and he told all of us that he had a long list of candidates for OC and that he would start having conversations on Tuesday. So Vrabel told us he would start talking to people about the OC job on Tuesday. Since then, we know that Tommy Rees went to Cleveland. I was not a huge fan of the idea of Tommy Rees due to his time at Notre Dame, the fact that he's 32 years old, has not worked with NFL quarterbacks much at all. But Tommy Rees, he stays in Cleveland. He gets promoted to be the offensive coordinator. Whether or not he'll call the plays, we'll have to wait and see. As we know, in Cleveland, it's been all over the place, right? Stefanski calling the plays. Van Pelt was there as the OC. He wasn't calling the plays. Then they went to Dorsey. Dorsey lasted a year. They fired Dorsey. Now they're moving to Tommy Rees. It's been a mess in Cleveland, starting with Stefanski and really starting with that ownership group. But Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator now in Cleveland, so he's obviously not making his way to New England anytime soon. Clint Kubiak is another name that's been brought up, right? Clint Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for New Orleans this past year underneath Dennis Allen. Kubiak was a name that was brought up regarding the Patriots job last year. Kubiak is in the middle of his second interview with the Seattle Seahawks. Certainly sounds like the Seahawks are likely to hire Kubiak. So Rees and Kubiak, I would say very likely they are off the list. They will not be considered. They will have other jobs. So you can wipe those two guys off the list. Now, since Tuesday, when Mike Vrabel told the world that he was going to talk to these candidates, he's going to start talking to people, there's really been nothing, not a peep. Not a peep about the Patriots search. Not a peep of who they reached out to. Not a single peep of who they're talking to. Nothing. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised that there's no word about what the Patriots are doing. I'm surprised that not one single name has been leaked to the media as far as interviewing for Mike Vrabel's offensive coordinator. I'm surprised for a couple of different reasons. Number one, you can speak to plenty of guys right now. McDaniels, Kubiak, others, many more. You can talk to those guys right now. You are not hindered to talk to some of those guys. Number two, usually when we talk about interview season, agents like to leak out this information. I've been asked this question a lot on Twitter at Nick C Radio. People asking me, do you just think that it's Mike Vrabel running a tight ship? It could be Vrabel running a tight ship. It could be that Vrabel wants everybody to know in the organization not to say a freaking word. But here's the thing. There are more people involved in this process than Vrabel. And I'm not even talking about the people that are in that front office at Gillette, which, by the way, we were told today by Albert Breer that Ryan Cowden, Vrabel's right-hand man, he's already at Foxborough. He's been there for a couple of days, got out of his contract on Monday with the Giants. So Vrabel and Cowden, they're in the building. They are certainly working. I don't think they're sitting there with their feet up doing nothing, right? They're certainly working. But the idea of how many people are in the loop? How many people know about who Vrabel wants to at least have a conversation with regarding the OC job? But you also have to look at it from the other side. Agents. Agents love leaking information. If you have a client that is interviewing for an OC job, you leak that out to the media. You leak it out to the media because you want to build value for your client. You want the whole world to know that your client is interviewing. That's a part of the process. And so the fact that we haven't heard anything about who the Patriots have talked to so far for this OC job, it's surprising to me because I expected at least one of these agents to leak word that, hey, my guy's talking to Vrabel. And we haven't seen that. Now, the national guys will tell you that everything points to Josh McDaniels. So maybe it's just as easy as Josh is going to have the job, but you still have to go through the Rooney Rule. The Patriots would have to interview at least one minority candidate for the OC position. And again, you have a lot of people out there that you can have the conversation with right now, and a lot of those guys have agents. So the national reporters will tell you that Josh McDaniels is the most likely. Now, there's been some word behind the scenes that Josh McDaniels will be the most likely. I've heard that word. Many people have heard that word. I'm not telling you any breaking news. But that we haven't heard anything is surprising. So who should be on this list? Who should be at the top of the list? I'll let you know. I'll give you 5 names. I've got 5 names for you that I hope Mike Vrabel would be interested in, and I hope that Vrabel will talk to all 5 of these guys, or at least 4 out of the 5. Get to that in a little bit. First, before I get to that, don't forget you can do a couple of things. You can hit that thumbs up button as you watch on YouTube. That helps us with the YouTube algorithm. That's how we hit our goal of 5,500 subscribers in the last 24 hours. It's because of you hitting that thumbs up. It's also because of you putting a comment in, right? You throw your comments in. Who do you want to see? Who do you not want to see as the offensive coordinator of this football team? Like the program, throw a comment in, and of course, subscribe to the show, subscribe to this channel, subscribe, and then click that notify bell. So like, comment, and subscribe. All 3 of those things, especially the first 2, will help us grow this community and continue to grow the voice of the Nick Cattle Show as we talk Patriots Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. Spotify, Apple Pods, friends, don't forget to rate and review. Charlie throws a $10 super chat at me. I appreciate the 10, Charlie. Thank you. Sup, Nick. Sup, Charlie. Thank you for the support. I appreciate you, my man. So before I get to my list of guys that I want Mike Vrabel to interview for this job, let me first give you the list of criteria, things that I'm looking for. I want the next offensive coordinator, in a perfect world, to be a person who has worked with quarterbacks. They've worked with quarterbacks. They've helped develop quarterbacks. When Alex Van Pelt was offered the job and took the job to be the OC for this past season, I told you a couple things about Van Pelt, right? I said he hasn't been an offensive play caller since 2009. So 15 years ago is the last time that he consistently week in, week out called plays. He had done it a couple times for Cleveland when Kevin Stefanski was sick, but he was not the play caller of that team. And so we didn't know what he was going to bring. We knew about the West Coast system. We knew who he coached underneath. But one of the things that I liked about Van Pelt, and we talked about it at the time, and I bring it back right now, one of the things that I liked about Alex Van Pelt was that he had a long history of working with quarterbacks and developing quarterbacks. And so you look at Drake May, and he's still in the infancy stage of his NFL career. If I'm looking to hire an offensive coordinator, I would like that guy. I would like that guy to at least have some experience working with quarterbacks, developing quarterbacks, doing those kinds of things, right? Somebody who has a history with that position. So I feel comfortable that they can help further develop Drake May. One thing. Second thing, I want to know if the person has called plays before. Has he called plays? Does he know what the job entails? Does he have a history of showing us on film what he calls in game, how he reacts, how he adjusts to certain things, right? His situational football awareness as a play caller. I want to see those things, right? His sequencing. So have you worked with quarterbacks? Have you actually called plays? Two of the things I want to know. Also, what kind of offense does this OC run? Do you run the West Coast offense? Do you run something different? I want to know that because Drake May, as we know, this past year worked within the West Coast world because of Alex Van Pelt. So what kind of scheme do you run? I also want to know whether or not you're a flight risk. Now, I'm willing to take flight risks. I'm willing to bring in guys that might be gone within the next year or two. I'm willing to do it as long as I can structure the offensive staff underneath that guy so when he does leave, we have somebody ready to take the job. But are you a flight risk? Are you somebody who could be gone in the next 12 months? If so, I need to be prepared for that. And finally, who do I think can get the very most out of Drake May? And who do I think can scheme to May's strengths? So those are 5 things, 5 sets, right? 5 different things as far as criteria goes that I'm looking for from an OC if I'm Vrabel. Have you worked with quarterbacks? Have you actually called plays? What kind of offense do you run? Am I concerned about you being a flight risk? And can you get the very most out of my young quarterback? Can you scheme around his strengths? Can you hide his weaknesses? That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm asking. So here are 5 names. You ready? Here are the 5 names I've got. Let's start with the guy that a lot of people think is the favorite right now, and that's Josh McDaniels. And I'm going to give you pros and cons, right? I'm going to give you the pros, why I would look at this individual, and then I would give you the questions I have about that individual. Let's start with McDaniels. He's a respected play caller. I know Evan Lazar during the Catch 22 podcast said this just the other day. If you talk to coaches around the NFL, coaches will tell you that game planning for a Josh McDaniels offense is a mother, is how Evan put it. He's a very respected play caller. I know some Patriots fans look back, they say, what has he done without Brady? Look at some other times. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you asked people around the league, McDaniels is a very, very respected play caller. People think that he's got a lot of skill. He also has a long list of quarterbacks that he's worked with, right? The resume with the quarterbacks. He's worked with Brady. He's worked with Garoppolo. He's worked with Castle. He's worked with Brissett. He's worked with a number of different guys. Mac Jones, Cam Newton. He has worked with young quarterbacks. He's worked with rookie quarterbacks. He's worked with veteran quarterbacks. He's worked with dual threat quarterbacks. He's worked with pocket passing quarterbacks. I mean, Josh McDaniels, when you look at the list of quarterbacks that he has worked with, it's a long list, and it's a very versatile list. So he has that experience with quarterbacks. And I don't think, I've said this from the very beginning when we talked about possibly Mike Vrabel coming in, Josh McDaniels is not a flight risk. He's not going to be a head coach unless he wants to go down to the college ranks. I don't think he would do that. So you don't have to worry about him leaving. He would bring stability for you, right? He'd be with Drake May for the next several years. Now, there are questions about McDaniels. Can McDaniels simplify his scheme? I talked about the Earhart-Perkins offense an awful lot last year, right? And I was very happy to get away from that offense when the Patriots decided to, quote-unquote, mutually part ways with Bill Belichick. I was happy to get away from that offense. I don't want McDaniels to walk in here with that Cheesecake Factory-like menu with the ridiculously tough terminology where, you know, wide receivers are trying to make 17,000 different reads I don't want that. So my first question to McDaniels would be, can you simplify this scheme? Can you simplify things? Can you make it a little bit more easy for everybody to absorb, including Drake May? And if you want to build on that as time goes, fine. But can you simplify your scheme? Can you also adapt your scheme to get the most out of Drake May? I don't want McDaniels if he's going to try to force Drake May to be Tom Brady. Drake May is not Tom Brady. Drake May is not Mac Jones. So how much can you adapt your scheme? How much can you work Drake May within the fabric of this offense to get the most out of your young quarterback? And of course, you have to question the fact that Josh McDaniels is not a West Coast guy. So this would be a bit of a different offense. Now, of course, there are things you can take from the West Coast offense. There are things like if you look at Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit, that offense is kind of a combination of different offenses. It even has some of the McDaniels, Earhart, Perkins offense within it, right? So you look at Detroit's offense, it's got some West Coast, it's got some McDaniels. So you can always marry different ideas and make it to be one offense that works under a bigger umbrella. But McDaniels is not a West Coast nuts and bolts kind of guy. That's not what he is. That's not who he is. And you look at St. Louis, he had a rough year in St. Louis with Sam Bradford. He had a somewhat rough year, a couple of years in Las Vegas, right? You look at the Denver years where he was over there as well. So there are legitimate questions and fair questions to ask Josh McDaniels about what has happened to him when he's been outside of New England. So those are my questions. So that's one name, Josh McDaniels. The next name that I have is a name that we heard an awful lot about last year. And I know a lot of people thought that he might end up here. And reportedly, he was the Patriots' #1 choice, and he was offered $3 million a year to be here. And he said, thanks, but no thanks. That is Rams tight ends coach and pass game coordinator. And, of course, I'm talking about Nick Caley. Now, I love the fact that Nick Caley has worked under Sean McVay now for a couple of years. He obviously has his hands in the West Coast offense under McVay. So it should be a more seamless transition from that offense to working with something that May would be comfortable with. He's a former tight ends coach too. And a lot of people will tell you when you have tight ends coach experience, that helps because tight ends, they're not only in the passing game, they're in the blocking game, the run game, right? So when you work with tight ends, you're looking at blocking schemes, you're looking at passing schemes, right? You're looking at all of that, run game and pass game. So Caley has a background working with tight ends, which means he's had his hand in the run game. He's had his hand in the passing game. He has learned under Sean McVay, which is very nice. And you've got that West Coast offense vibe. Now, there are legitimate questions about Nick Caley. He's never coached quarterbacks. And that was one of the criteria, right? I want to know whether or not these guys have worked with quarterbacks. Caley has never worked with quarterbacks. That's a major question for me. Now, if this was last year, and you were going to bring Nick Caley in and then maybe hire AVP as a quarterback's coach, that's a different set of circumstances. But if you're going to bring in Nick Caley and he's going to be the guy, he's never had experience with quarterbacks. So what do you do at quarterback's coach? Are you hiring somebody else? Do you want Caley to do both? Do you want him to be OC and QB's coach? So major question, never worked with quarterbacks. Another big question, Nick Caley's never called plays. He's never been a play caller. So do you want to follow up the Alex Van Pelt experience where we saw that Alex was the better of the trio? We talked about that, right? Van Pelt was better than Covington. Van Pelt was better than Mayo. But there were still questions about Alex Van Pelt and his ability to adjust during games. There were questions about Van Pelt in the red zone. There were questions about, Van Pelt situationally in what he called 3rd and short, 4th and short, some of those play calls, right? Some of his sequencing. There were questions. Now, you can certainly improve upon that, but there were questions, and I thought they were legitimate questions. So do you want to go from Van Pelt to somebody in Nick Caley who's never called plays? Because we might see some of that same kind of stuff in 2025 that we saw in 2024. I'd also ask Nick Caley, you passed on New England last year. Do you really want to be here? Now, of course, he's got Drake May this year, which would be a heck of a lot different than what he was walking into last season. But do you really want to be here? You stayed in LA last year. So is this a move that you really want to make? So McDaniels, Caley, 2 names. Next name on my list, Mike LaFleur. Now, Mike LaFleur is the offensive coordinator of the Rams. He doesn't call plays for the Rams. Sean McVay calls plays for the Rams. But the one thing about LaFleur that I really like, he not only has worked under Sean McVay, he's also worked under Kyle Shanahan. So you want to talk about 2 of the best offensive minds in football right now. You would say Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay are on that list. And LaFleur has worked underneath both of those guys, which I think is tremendous. Now, LaFleur was the offensive coordinator at the New York Jets, so he has called plays. He just doesn't call plays currently. But he was the Jets OC for 2 years, and he called the plays for those 2 years. Robert Saleh brought him over from San Francisco, right? Saleh and LaFleur left Shanahan to go to the Jets. Saleh brought his guy. So LaFleur called those plays for 2 years for the Jets. Now, the thing with LaFleur is how much do you hold that against him when you look at the numbers? Because his quarterback was Zach Wilson. So was it LaFleur or was it the limitations of Zach Wilson that impacted LaFleur's ability to call plays at a great level, good level, okay level? But at least you know that Mike LaFleur has called plays for a couple of years at the NFL level. He has the experience, and he's worked under tremendously respected guys like Shanahan and McVay. He also has game planning experience in spades because of working with McVay as the OC. The questions about Mike LaFleur that I would have, what's his relationship with Vrabel? Because reportedly, I've heard people say that Vrabel and Matt LaFleur, Mike's brother, had a bit of a falling out. And they don't necessarily send each other Christmas cards during the holiday season. So would Mike Vrabel actually talk to Mike LaFleur? Would Mike LaFleur be interested? Would he be interested, given the relationship that might be shaky between Vrabel and his brother? So I don't know about the relationship dynamics with Mike LaFleur and Vrabel. Mike LaFleur has also never coached quarterbacks, which is a question mark, right? So that's the third name. I got McDaniels, I got Caley, I got Mike LaFleur. Before we get to the fourth name, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's continue to build the numbers. We hit our goal. If you're jumping in recently here on this podcast today, we've hit our goal of 5,500 subscribers. Thanks to all of you. The next goal now is 6,000. We got to get to 6K. I want to get to 6K by NFL free agency, which gives us a couple of months. That's a pretty good runway. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click that notify bell. Let's continue to build momentum for this podcast, for this YouTube channel. Appreciate every single one of you. Spotify, Apple Pods, friends, don't forget to rate and review. The next name on my list is Dave Ragone. Now, Dave Ragone is the Rams quarterbacks coach. So, first of all, he's working under Sean McVay. Again, so if you are a fan of the idea of bringing somebody in who's worked with McVay, whether it's in the past or currently, Ragone is somebody that is working with McVay right now as the Rams quarterbacks coach. Ragone, interestingly enough, also worked with Arthur Smith in Atlanta. So he was Arthur Smith's offensive coordinator with the Falcons. So he obviously has that tie-in. So Arthur Smith, very respected offensive coordinator. Sean McVay, very respected offensive coordinator. Ragone has worked with both of those guys. Now working with the Rams, much like Caley and LaFleur, you're looking at somebody who is, stamped as far as the West Coast system. He'd have an idea of what he wants to run, and that would look like the West Coast offense. That would certainly have a lot of elements of Sean McVay's offense, but it also would have elements of Arthur Smith's offense, which we know Mike Vrabel likes. So Ragone makes some sense with those tie-ins. He's also a quarterback's coach, and he played quarterback. So he has experience with working with quarterbacks and being a quarterback himself. So some things to like about Dave Ragone. History with Arthur Smith, currently with Sean McVay, West Coast offense in that background, quarterback, and quarterback's coach. I like all of those things. The question, and I think it's really the only question about Ragone, is that he's never called plays. When he was with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, Smith called the plays. So Ragone, again, if you want to bring somebody in who has no experience as a play caller, that's a risk that you're taking, and Ragone would be one of those guys. He's never called plays. So do you feel comfortable with that? It's a question. I think it's all subjective, right? Some people might be fine with it. Some people might not be fine with it. So McDaniels, Caley, Mike LaFleur, Dave Ragone. 4 names. There's a 5th name on this list, and it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart to keep this guy as the 5th name on the list. But there's a reason why he's a 5th name on the list, and this changed as of about an hour ago. And I'm talking about Josh McCown. Now, you've heard me talk about Josh McCown. I said this on Wednesday. If you wanted to go with somebody who has not called plays, Josh McCown was the guy that was the leader in the clubhouse for me. he would have been at the top of the list if you're going with somebody who hasn't called plays. He has a relationship with Drake May going back to his high school days. He has worked under Kevin O'Connell, who I think is a very smart play caller, very smart offensive mind. I think O'Connell is a good coach, if not very good coach. So he's got that relationship built in with May. He's got the O'Connell link. Josh McCown obviously played quarterback. He's worked with quarterbacks. He's the current quarterbacks coach right now for the Vikings. So I loved the idea of Josh McCown if you were going with somebody who did not have experience calling plays. Unfortunately, McCown is now off the list. Cross him off, punt him off, whatever you want to do. Because according to Adam Schefter, Josh McCown is not going to leave Minnesota unless he's leaving Minnesota for a head coaching job. McCown is interviewing with the New York Jets today for their head coach position. And Schefter reported today that McCown is not going to take interviews really for the OC gigs around the league. That if he doesn't get a head coaching job this cycle, then he is just going to go back to Minnesota. He's going to run it back with O'Connell and the Vikings, and then he's going to wait for a team next year to offer him a head coaching job. So Josh McCown, who was very high on my list, unfortunately, no longer on the list because he wants to stay in Minnesota, which is interesting because you would think he'd want some experience in calling plays. You would think that if he goes to a team as a head coach, he would be the play caller, but maybe Josh McCown doesn't want to be a head coach / offensive play caller. Maybe McCown wants to just be the CEO type coach and hire an OC to call plays and hire a DC. I don't know. But Adam Schefter reporting today on the Pat McAfee show that Josh McCown's not leaving Minnesota unless he is going to be a head coach for another franchise. So that one hurts. That one hurts. By the way, Mike Borgonzi, a name that's been brought up an awful lot with the Patriots, especially when Mike Vrabel was hired. He has some kind of a link with Borgonzi. Of course, we've heard Borgonzi's from Everett. He's a local guy. He's going to go be the GM of the Titans. So kind of fascinating, right? Mike Vrabel was linked to two guys. It was Borgonzi and it was Cowden. Cowden is the person that Vrabel picks. So Cowden is already here at Gillette Stadium with Vrabel, working hand in hand with the front office. So he took Cowden from the Giants, and the Giants let Cowden come here. And then you had Borgonzi, the other guy who was linked with Vrabel, going to Vrabel's old team, the Tennessee Titans. So it's kind of an interesting story, but Borgonzi will be the GM in Tennessee. So that broke a little while ago. All right. So that's my list. There's more names. There are more names that you could bring up. Again, I think Clint Kubiak is going to Seattle, so he's not even on the list. I think that's going to be done by the end of the day. I think Kubiak is going to end up in Seattle within the next 24 to 48 hours. That's my guess. So I don't think Kubiak's on the radar. The top guys that I'm looking at, McDaniels, Caley, Mike LaFleur, and Dave Ragone, those are my four. I might go back to the drawing board and find a fifth name, but those are my four right now. McCown would have been right up there with, the top guys, McDaniels, McCown, Caley. But again, McCown's out. All right, let's wrap things up today with a little Robyn Glaser talk. I know Robyn Glaser has had the eyes and ears of many people over the past year, ever since that Seth Wickersham story came out about Robyn Glaser and Glaser being involved with football and working with Jonathan Kraft. Let me just say this. So Robyn Glaser's role to me has been exaggerated. It's been embellished. I don't think Robyn Glaser has been a major force in the football operation. I think she works on contracts. I think she was advising Gerard Mayo and helping him go through some of the league protocols, some of the logistics. I think that's what she works with, right? She's got a lawyer background. I think she's there to put out some fires, help out with some contracts, and help out with procedural things within that building. I don't think Robyn Glaser had absolutely anything to do with any of the decisions that were made as far as football goes. I don't think she's weighing in and having a big voice with the coaching staff. I don't think she's involved with the draft. I don't think she's involved with free agency. I think the Robyn Glaser thing was just over the top from the beginning. And I've said that. It's been over the top from the beginning. She's a liaison for Jonathan Kraft. Now, you could say she had eyes, right? She was Jonathan Kraft's eyes at times, and she made sure that certain things were happening, and I'm sure that she would go back to Jonathan, and they have had conversations, and that stuff is legitimate. I'd have legitimate concern about that, her relationship with Jonathan Kraft and what she's reporting back to Jonathan, but I think her role overall was exaggerated. Now, Kirk Minahan yesterday came out and said that Glaser's gone from the Patriots. Burt Breer went on Beadle and Zoe and said that that wasn't true. Jerry Thornton from Barstool came out and said that he actually spoke to multiple people, and those people agreed with Kirk and said that Glaser is gone. I think there's some semantics games being played here. I think we're talking semantics. Now, I don't know this for sure, but here's my theory. My theory is that Robyn Glaser is resigning. She's going to walk away from at least the Patriots side of the Kraft group. She's had enough. There's been a lot of, squawking about her role. She's been criticized. People have thrown her under the bus. And I think she says, I've had enough. I'm moving on. I don't need my name dragged. I don't need people believing that I'm some kind of mystery assistant general manager with this football team. I want out. I'm done. I'm going to resign from the Patriots. So I think what's going to happen here, this is not any kind of intel that I got. I think what's going on is Glaser wants to resign. She has already decided to resign. She's going to leave at a certain date. And my guess is that this stuff got out too early. Somebody let this out of the bag, right? Somebody let the cat out of the bag too early. And it got to Minahan, and it got to Thornton, and Minahan tweets it, and now everybody's talking about it. But my guess is Robyn Glaser is going to resign from the Patriots, and it was a story that wasn't supposed to leak, wasn't supposed to get out there. Somebody opened their mouth. Somebody leaked it. And now what you have is, some people with the team reaching out to some of the media, scrambling PR-wise to kind of quiet it all down. Or she's in the building. Okay, she's in the building. But I don't think she had a big hand in much of anything. And I think she's probably decided to resign. And now it's just PR games and trying to put out the fire because somebody let something out when it wasn't supposed to be let out. That's my guess. And why anybody should care, I got a couple of reasons why, actually. I want football people in those rooms, right? Even if Glaser did not have a heavy hand in the football operation, I want football people in those rooms. I want football minds in those rooms. The people that should be having conversations with coaches and going through all of that, that should be football people. And I think part of the reason why that Glaser was involved, last year is because Gerard Mayo wasn't ready. And so there was some hand-holding for Mayo last year. And part of that was Glaser helping him check certain boxes and make sure things are happening. So I do like the idea of less people that are not football people. The people that are not football people, I want less of those people walking around in the hallways at Gillette. Remove them from the process. And I also think, one last name means that there's just less clutter. So streamline the operation. So that's what I think about the Robyn Glaser stuff. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Next goal is 6,000 subscribers. Click that thumbs up. Help us with the algorithm. Throw a comment in. Enjoy your Friday night. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the football. We will be back on Monday, unless news breaks. We will be back on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. Appreciate every single one of you. This has been The Nick Cattle Show.